The year is 1983, and Ford desperately wants to introduce its new and upcoming small SUV to the marketplace, the Bronco II, to compete with a vehicle that's already being sold, the S10 Blazer from General Motors, and to compete with a soon-to-be introduced vehicle from AMC, the Jeep Cherokee. Appropriately named the Bronco II as its external dimensions were almost identical to Ford's original Bronco, the Bronco II was introduced for the 1984 model year but went on sale about midway through 1983. And similar to the concept that GM employed in developing the S10 Blazer, the Bronco II was based on Ford's Ranger platform. It was a little bit different from the Blazer in that the Bronco II was about a foot shorter than that S10 Blazer, and the Bronco II came standard with four-wheel drive as well as V6 power under hood, 115 horsepower Cologne-sourced 2.8-liter V6 in this first model year. And you could get your Bronco II in 3 different flavors. There was the standard Bronco II that came equipped with reclining front bucket seats in vinyl. One up from that was really the top-of-the-line luxury trim, the Bronco II XLT, where you had bucket seats that were cloaked in standard cloth and vinyl and full vinyl door trim panels, complete with a map pocket. Ooh. And there was a sport edition, the Bronco II XLS, that Ford proclaimed was for, quote, the fun of it all. The sporty, fun-to-drive theme presented on the outside is carried over on the inside with a black, thick-wrapped, soft sport steering wheel. So you got a nice steering wheel and some decals, and that was the Sport Bronco II. No difference in powertrain between any of these versions. Regardless, the interiors of the Bronco II were actually pretty nicely equipped and comfortable, especially in the XLT and XLS trim. This particular vehicle here is an XLT that you see here. I believe it's a 1987 model, I want to say, because there are no V6 badges on the front there or the little Bronco logo of the horse underneath where it says Bronco II on the fender. But regardless, the Bronco II was a pretty compact SUV overall. I don't think in looking at these, a lot of people realize how small they are by modern standards. But this rode atop a 94-inch wheelbase. Yes, that's right, a 94-inch wheelbase. It had an overall length of 158.4 inches. So for purposes of a comparison, a modern-day Chevrolet Cruze has a wheelbase of about 106 inches. So the wheelbase on the Bronco II was a foot shorter than a modern-day Chevrolet Cruze, and the Chevrolet Cruze has an overall length of about 184 inches. So the Bronco is considerably shorter at 158 inches versus the Cruze's 184 inches. That's a difference in overall length between the Cruze and the Bronco of over 2 feet. So it just gives you a sense of how small, in terms of overall length, this Bronco II really was. As the years went by, the Bronco II really didn't get too many styling changes until the 1989 model year, when it now shared the Ford Ranger's new sleek front end and redesigned interior. But for the 1984 to 1988 model years, there were just a few changes, mostly under hood in 1986, as opposed to the carbureted 115 horsepower 2.8-liter V6. The Bronco II got a 2.9-liter 140 horsepower V6 in that year. In some model years, there was also a 2.3-liter turbo diesel 4-cylinder that made 86 horsepower available, but that was dropped after the 1986 model year. Overall, when it was first launched, customers responded pretty well to the Bronco II. Its compact dimensions and open and airy cabin, you can see, it really was the only compact SUV to have this tremendously large side glass here that went all the way into the roof, basically just wrapped into the roof, giving rear seat passengers and even the driver and passenger, if you glance back in that direction, a full panoramic view of what was going on in the rear. The Dodge Ram Charger would employ a similar approach, although on a full-size SUV. But here on the Bronco II, like I said, it gave the cabin this open and airy feel. Unfortunately, however, that 94-inch wheelbase, coupled with that heavy glass in the back and the tall nature of this vehicle, endowed it with some inherently challenging problems. Long before the vehicle was introduced to the public, Ford knew that these Bronco IIs had potential rollover issues. And as a result, Ford actually bypassed some of its own rollover testing because it felt the vehicles were too dangerous to execute the tests. Engineers suggested a number of fixes for the Bronco II, but unfortunately, the fixes that were implemented prior to production really didn't cure the rollover issues associated with the vehicle. Unfortunately, while the vehicle was initially lauded in the press, in a few years, its reputation caught up to it. And by 1989, Consumer Reports had bestowed upon the Bronco II its dreaded avoid rating because of its tendency to roll over in executing emergency maneuvers. Ford had also apparently exacerbated the rollover issue by dropping the standard four-wheel drive setup for the Bronco II in 1986. And according to Insurance Institute for Highway Safety data, the Bronco II in rear-wheel drive form had a fatality rate of 3.78 fatalities per 10,000 vehicles. This compared to 1.74 fatalities per 10,000 vehicles for the four-wheel drive Bronco and 1.11 fatalities per 10,000 vehicles for the Suzuki Samurai, which I previously mentioned. As a result of these issues, and really due to the popularity of the Bronco II, it sold about 700,000 units over its lifetime. By the early 2000s, it was reported that Ford had spent over $2 billion in litigation with respect to the vehicle. And clearly, when Ford replaced the Bronco II with the Explorer, it obviously changed the name, and it even replaced the full-size Bronco with the Expedition name when it decided to replace that. It perhaps did that in both cases because the Bronco name had been associated with some unfortunate items like the rollover crashes associated with the Bronco II. And then don't forget, the full-size Bronco also had an association with another unfortunate event of its own. That is O.J. Simpson riding in the back of a full-size Bronco going down the LA freeway in the early 1990s. So perhaps for those reasons, Ford dropped the Bronco name altogether. Although it has clearly now been resurrected, and the Bronco as well as the Bronco Sport for Ford are hit vehicles. Ford also obviously brought back the Maverick for its little pickup truck. So Ford is starting to recycle some of these names, but I think there was good reason for them just letting them set out to pasture back in the early 1990s. However, there were some positives of the Bronco II. Like I said, it was a capable vehicle off-road, and as you can see here in this interior shot, the bucket seats were very comfortable. The interior was actually a nice, quiet, tranquil place to be. The dash in this model is, well, kind of dated looking. I love that automatic shifter that's very tall and rotated an angle. You can see very clear round dial gauges, the tachometer on the left, the speedometer on the right. Lots of buttons on the radio is typical for Ford of the era, but the radios that Ford had in these vehicles were excellent as well. So this was a nice place to be in a very compact package, but like any SUV, you should just be careful and not go flying around corners in one of these, and that's probably just good protocol in any vehicle that you're driving. But you can see if you take your time and enjoy your time driving down the road, you're certainly not going to win any races with 115 or 140 horsepower under hood in the V6 form. You'll get places smoothly, comfortably, and reliably. Hope you enjoyed the spotlight on Ford's Bronco II. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you. Thanks again for watching.